Hey everyone, and welcome to Tony for... I mean Tony for you. Persona's social links are amazing. As one of the biggest draws to the series, they develop characters far past what the main events of the story could handle. The one-on-one time you get with these characters can really enhance the appreciation for the individual and the role they play in the story. With that being said, are they really necessary for Persona as a series? For as much love as I can heap onto them, there are criticisms of the systems that are equally as valid as any praise. I wanted to go back to the very inception of social links, from Persona 3 to the very last game in the series, Persona 5 Royal, and give an honest discussion and critique of the systems we've all just come to expect will be a part of the series forever. We'll also dive into the first 3 Persona games, with 1 and 2 duology, to see how characters were handled there as well. I'll discuss some general talking points for social links as a whole, and then go through the games, discussing the overall social link system for each one. As they can vary wildly in quality, I'll pick a few in each game that I think bear mentioning, but not each one in depth, as that's another video entirely. Let's dive into it and find out if social links are really as integral to the plot as people think they are. Persona 3 is a unique case, as due to it being the first in the series to have this social link mechanic, it is by far the least interesting and well utilized. That isn't to say that there aren't great social links in this game, far from it, but you can definitely tell it was their first time writing them. There's a lot of limitations on the systems in Persona 3, such as in the original, the male party members could not establish a social link with you. I have no idea why they decided to do this. Presumably, they thought the male party members would spend enough time with you during gameplay and story and develop alongside it, and female party members were given one strictly for romance reasons. That's probably not the actual reason, but it's the only one I can think of to justify the decisions they made. This is a problem somewhat solved in Persona 3 Portable with the female route, but this adds its whole new suite of issues. Another odd mechanic debasing the social links is the fact that if you're in a social link with a woman, you have no choice but to enter a romantic relationship with them, essentially forcing you to become a sly, cheating dog if you want to max every social link. After receiving the message saying things are becoming serious, if you spend time with another girl, the social link of your girlfriends that aren't maxed out will decay. Most people call it the jealousy mechanic, and it's understandable but pretty horrible. This forces you as a player to focus solely on a character after reaching a certain point, for fear of agitating them in a relationship you had no say in. Your only other option is to simply ignore them for the rest of the game. The mechanic doesn't instantly drop their link rank after hanging out with another girl. It just drops the decay counter by a significant amount. And speaking of the decay counter, even if you do ignore them, there is a natural social link decay that happens in the game, where if you don't talk to a certain social link at least once every 90 days, the social link will go down by 1. That may sound like a long time, and it is, but the whole mechanic adds a pretty needless layer of stress onto what would otherwise be a fun side experience you can completely tailor to your liking. Gameplay-wise, the increased ranks raise the bonus experience your persona gets upon fusion based on the matching arcana's social link level. Once you achieve max rank with a social link, you will also unlock the ability to fuse an ultimate persona of that given arcana, such as series favorite Beelzebub if you max out the devil social link. The added experience is a fairly simple boost in power that serves its purpose well, but I have never cared about the bonus experience I got at all, and only fused personas of the given social link I was trying to improve, thus completely subverting the point of the bonuses. For the ultimate persona though, this is a very fun bonus that adds an extra bit of flavor and lore to the given character and tarot, even if you most likely won't be able to fuse the higher level ones. Okay, I've talked enough about the mechanical side of these social links, let's talk about the actual character stories they tell. Some standout social links of the game, good and bad. Akinari Kamiki, or the Dying Man of the Sun Arcana, tells an incredibly touching story of a sick man leaving behind a modest legacy reflecting on his life and the nature of death. Junpei Iori on the female protagonist route, telling a heart-wrenching story about child abuse, how it can affect the development of a young mind, and overcoming trauma with the help of a close friend. Some standout social links on the more negative side are Bebe, the foreign exchange student. He's a French weeaboo obsessed with Japanese culture, and whose tenuous at best ties to the themes of the game is that his aunt is dead. And Nozomi Suemitsu, an obese child obsessed with food as a coping mechanism for his late brother being seen as much more successful than him. Nozomi's potentially interesting social link is ruined by him being a little cult leader and scamming kids out of their money in exchange for a promise to paradise, simply to buy more food. Of course, you can't talk about bad Persona 3 social links without talking about Ken Amada from the female protagonist route, who is a 16-year-old girl entering a presumably romantic relationship with a 10-year-old boy, and also presumably being played by an adult man behind the screen. The rest of the social links vary wildly, with very enjoyable experiences like, I personally really love Yukari as a character and her portrayal of a family going through the death of a parent, and many people love Aigis for her tackling with emotion and becoming more human over the course of the game, to pretty forgettable, like Mamoru Hayase, a star athlete saddled with a family stricken with poverty, and Keisuke Hiragi, a young man whose father pressures him to become a doctor against his wishes, and after him deciding to study abroad to escape his father, decides he ultimately wants to become a doctor to help people anyway. With all that being said, Persona 3's social links overall are not very good. For their first time trying, it served its purpose well enough, but when viewed as a whole, it's very rough around the edges, with a few notable exceptions. The themes of death permeating the game are expressed in a few of the social links, but the majority are forgettable for the most part. During gameplay, they all coalesce into a mediocre experience of meeting new people all struggling in their own way with varying degrees of intrigue. The lack of party member social links, besides romance, is a big detractor for me, but what we do get is well done, with Fuka and Yukari being amazing social links, and being famous and infamous respectively. The added development you get with the party members is mostly nice, if silly at times, and the side characters ranging wildly, with incredibly noticeable differences in quality. A bit stressful at times for the average player, especially with the requirements to start party members' social links usually being maxing out a stat, and on top of that worrying about the link decaying. This requirement, and the fact that only female party members can have social links, inevitably leads to a more natural development given to the male characters of C's, and the female members being an afterthought, at least on the male route. Atlus may have felt it unnecessary to expand their character, since the social link would pick up the slack. You can definitely tell this was their first time trying this system, and could be viewed as a big detriment to the story. A switch of focus to a more overarching narrative with plenty of downtime to interact with side characters caused a lot of those characters to feel underdeveloped and somewhat tropey, like Mitsuru and most of the non-party member social links. The Persona game with the biggest peaks and valleys character-wise in the series, and social links are no exception. Persona 4 is an entry in the series I hold very dear to my heart. It's my favorite entry, and the game achieves that without even having nostalgia going for it, as I played it in my early college years. Regardless, let's talk about the social links in as objective a sense as possible, and decide how it benefits or detracts from the game experience overall. The mechanics surrounding social links as a whole were cleaned up, adding a social link for every party member and allowing a non-romantic option for female characters that significantly changes the overall message of each one. There is no social link decay, and very few have social stat requirements, but if they do, they progress naturally, rather than requiring max to start. Nanako and Dojima come to mind in this, as for Nanako, her early ranks require level 3 expression and later on requires 5 as a natural progression of the story, and Dojima requires level 2, 3, and 4 expression progressing over the course of ranks 1 through 5. Gameplay-wise, they all serve the same purpose as the previous game, in that they only increase the experience boost you get when fusing personas of the corresponding arcana. The boosts are nicer in this game, however, due to the addition of the Empress social link for Margaret, where she asks you to fuse specific personas with specific skills. The added boost in XP can expedite the process of acquiring personas with said skills, for much easier fusion and progression. This game also has a mechanic where the higher the social link of a party member, the more added benefits they gain in battle, such as healing others from status effects, or taking mortal blows for the main character. This mechanic was also in Persona 3 Portable, but not FES. In addition to that, for party members, when the social link is maxed, they awaken to the second form of their persona, enhancing their abilities by an incredible amount. This party member persona evolution mechanic remains for the rest of the series, and is always an exciting incentive to interact with your favorites on the team. With all that said, let's talk about the actual character stories these social links tell. For great social links, there really is a plethora to choose from. Nanako and Dojima are quite possibly the best social links in the entire series, with each of the family members struggling to overcome the traumatic loss of their loved one, Nanako's mother and Dojima's wife, from an unsolved car accident. Separately, they are amazing in their own right, but when viewed together, they become an incredibly gripping story of dealing with and overcoming trauma, in addition to growing closer as a family, and that includes the player as a part of said family. There are also more deeply personal stories that may speak to you more or less depending on your position in life, but Naoki Konishi and Ko Ichijo spring to mind right away. Naoki Konishi portrays a young man dealing with the loss of his sister in an incredibly unique and relatable way, slowly coming to terms with the fact that he will never see his sister again, and understanding even the mundane ways they interacted are gone forever. This one never fails to bring emotion out of me, truly one of the best social links in the entire series. Ko Ichijo is an adoptive son to a wealthy family and struggles to fit into their strict code of conduct, but at the same time wanting so desperately to feel at home with the people he loves when they lower their expectations of him. On the flip side to some of the best stories in the entire series, there are some stinkers, notably Eri Minami and Shu Nakajima. Eri Minami is a woman that married a wealthy man who had a son from a previous marriage. While the father is away on business, she struggles to connect with her stepson, and even second-guesses her love for him as well as her husband. One of the first interactions that increases her bond with you is to tell her that you hate kids moments after her son walks off screen. Rough. It's not a terrible story at all. In fact, I feel I like it more than most others do, but it's incredibly unlikely that anybody would continue seeing her after the first few ranks. This is accompanied with an oddly restrictive avenue to see her, by working at the daycare center on very specific days. Shu Nakajima is a young boy intensely focused on studying. You are his tutor, and slowly begin to understand that to him, the only worth he has is directly tied to his grades. The young boy believes his mother to only be proud of him when he gets top of his class, and he forgoes all other aspects of early life, like making friends and enjoying his free time. On the surface, it's not a bad social link, but the character of Shu is very unlikable. Maybe for a Japanese audience he's more relatable, but the troubles of a kid connecting with his mother seems unremarkable compared to the other amazingly impactful stories we can see and be directly involved in other social links. Those two are sincerely the only social links I could argue are on the worst side. While if you know this channel, you know I hate Marie, it's for more personal taste reasons rather than legitimately thinking her character is weak. The party members' social links are a point of contention for people, however, due to the importance of them for properly understanding their characters. Aside from Teddy, whose social link progresses on his own, characters like Kanji, Yosuke, Rise, actually all of the party members, have extremely fleshed out character development tied to their social link. This begs the question of if this character development should be hidden behind these optional free time activities and missable. The insight into their backstory and personality gives new depth to the character and could turn an otherwise forgettable party member into one you wholeheartedly relate to and love for the rest of the game. Despite the importance of the social link to the character, it isn't necessary for the game to require their completion. The choice to portray a character in two lights is intentional. The full link advances naturally as the game progresses, much like in Persona 3, but in each individual character, their unique life is not necessary for understanding the narrative of the game. The way party members act in a group setting contrasted with the more serious one-on-one interactions where they open up to you as a person can only be achieved in a very specific way without completely derailing the story. For this reason, the social link system meshes perfectly with the small-town high school setting with a much more unique cast of characters. They are all unique and demand a considerable amount of time to tell such drastically different stories, much different to the type of characters in early Persona games and contemporary RPGs of the time. The player is free to pick and choose which social links are deserving of their time, and are rewarded with stories that cater to the myriad of different people playing this game. There are some bumps in the road, like certain social links being incredibly difficult to find, like previously mentioned Naoki Kunishi, where you have to find him after a certain day standing in the hall with no indicator above his head, 3 times in a row to start it. The Fox social link also bears mentioning here, as it's a quest social link tied to fulfilling certain tasks like delivering items to NPCs and acquiring different materials from the TV world. Nothing too horrible, just moderately annoying when compared to the others. Persona 4's social links overall are a fantastic progression of the idea from Persona 3, and where that game stumbled, Persona 4 enhances the idea tremendously. Social links enhance the story to such a degree it's difficult to put into words. Some of the most memorable parts of this game come from these specific social links, and many fans of the series would say the same thing. Such varied stories with a remarkably consistent quality to the writing make the system impossible to argue against. Persona 4 did a tremendous job incorporating social links into the overall narrative and themes, with very few low points. A pillar of the series. Persona 5, the most popular entry in the series and by that virtue, the most contentious. This game made a lot of changes to the core aspects of the series, and most interestingly of all, changes to the social link system. Now called confidants, every character the player meets and establishes a connection with will provide him unique benefits and abilities during his escapades in the cognitive world. Before we get into the differences, the confidant system is very similar to the social link system in Persona 4. 10 ranks per character, and each level progressively increasing the bonus XP you get when fusing a persona of that given arcana, along with a bonus super persona for maxing the confidant out. What sets this game apart, however, gameplay integration wise, is confidant benefits. Each person the player comes across has something new to learn from, to strengthen Joker's physical capabilities, mental capabilities, provide him new tools, provide him new ideas, etc. In the case of party members, each of them gain increased loyalty, allowing them to get everyone out of binds by relieving them of status effects and even protecting the player from mortal danger, much like in the previous games. In addition to these, each party member's confidant bestows wholly unique benefits depending on the character that adds a good bit of flavor to the interactions. Skills like On's crocodile tears begging personas you're negotiating with to lower their demands, or Makoto's shadow factorization, which shows if your attack will be absorbed, reflected, or have no effect on a given enemy. These skills were hand-picked to be given by specific party members and flesh out their personality with gameplay in an extremely interesting way. Some benefits are more helpful than others, with Sojiro simply allowing you to spend precious free time making healing items you most likely won't need anyway, and Kawakami's confidant abilities allowing you to have free time after coming back from the cognitive world, which usually is not possible, perform actions for you like crafting lockpicks and doing laundry, and let you skip otherwise useless classes to let you craft or read on your own. Needless to say, Kawakami is unmistakably one of the most important confidants to get early on. These gameplay additions do a lot to make the system more enjoyable, as you get a more tangible benefit to gameplay rather than just increasing bonus XP, but some could view this as a double-edged sword. With this system, some confidants you love might have less than stellar confidant abilities, like Torinosuke Yoshida only allowing you to get more items and money from persona negotiations. On the flip side, some confidants may have a story not particularly enjoyable, but have incredibly useful abilities, like Yuki Mishima simply giving your party and even backup party increased experience points, making leveling up much easier. For a completionist like myself, it isn't that much of a problem. But for the average player, choosing which confidant to max simply because of the gameplay benefit could sour the experience. Overall, the added benefits are just that, benefits, so unintentional consequences aside, it's a very welcome addition. Like always, let's talk about the actual stories these confidants tell. Futaba Sakura's link shows the story of a girl who was previously suffering from trauma-induced hallucinations and a life of seclusion following the suspicious death of her mother, coming out of her shell little by little. The link uses every interaction to convey different aspects of her personality, displaying relatable and endearing aspects of Futaba as a character as she tries her best in adapting to a normal life and reaching out to previously positive people in her past. Hifumi Togo shows us a girl whose passion lies with shogi, and her dream closely tied to her success in it. She practices in all her spare time, and is seemingly quite successful, but it's eventually revealed that her mother and manager was fixing matches to sow a false narrative around the up-and-coming beautiful shogi queen, choosing to steer her daughter more towards being a model or an idol. Hifumi feels betrayed and questions the path she chose as the truth is revealed, but eventually rebels against her mother to truly chase after her dream. Overall, the confidant system is a step in the right direction, but there are still some forgettable stories. For rougher confidants, Makoto Nijima and Ichiko Oya spring to mind immediately. Makoto Nijima's confidant, aside from her as a character, consists of her attempting to be more cordial with the other students outside of her duties as the student council president. This leads to her becoming friends with an airheaded student as she falls down a dark path, working as a hostess and dating a con artist. Makoto and the player spend multiple links obsessing over and borderline stalking the girl before finally confronting the boyfriend and going home. A disservice to the character of Makoto, as her design and role in the story proper make her a fan favorite. Ichiko Oya is the series punching bag at this point, and the first person you might think of when you think of bad social links, or in this case confidants. Hers is a story of her work as a journalist, where her passion lies in shining light on the darkness and speaking truth to power. She's ultimately shooed into writing fluff pieces by her boss. The reason for this is that she's trying to shine a light on the antagonist Shido's misdeeds, and in doing so put her partner in serious danger. On the surface, this confidant seems good, but most of the time it's spent listening to her getting drunk at a bar and complaining, with very few bursts of excitement, and ultimately concluding with her boss letting her go back to writing what she wants. Ichiko accomplishes very little in the link, and comes off as irresponsible. If it weren't for the player helping her in mementos, you'd have almost no bearing in the story being told. The party social links are handled much in the same way as the previous entry, Persona 4, but in this case you could argue much more to the point that the confidant itself is crucial in understanding the motivations of each character. Futaba's, specifically, is an example of character development necessary for her role in the story after she joins the Phantom Thieves. When you spend time seeing her slowly break out of her shell, becoming more open and comfortable with the people around her, it puts into context her change from a girl who could barely speak face to face with people to a quirky girl you could find on any college campus. The change can seem very drastic to someone who didn't take the time to prioritize her confidant and completely change your understanding of the character. Ryuji Sakamoto as well opens up about the previous trauma he faces as a direct result of the actions perpetrated by Kamoshida, the game's first real antagonist. His hatred of him contextualizes his role in the story, the actions he takes, and helps in understanding his motivations. Despite all the potential downsides to the confidant system when it comes to party members, the stories they tell would be incredibly difficult to incorporate during the events of the plot without being a jarring tonal shift. Much like in Persona 4, the one-on-one experience you get by reaching out to a character allows for a more personal story to be told. Without the context of the player opting into learning more about the given character, each member of the Phantom Thieves would demand much more interaction with each other and jarring monologues about their life story. For the side characters, I view this game to be less interesting overall, and a majority of them can be boiled down to the Persona 5 formula. Character introduces themselves. Character reveals they had an issue with another third-party individual or group. The player asks what their full name is to sort the opposing party out in mementos. Character finds out the player is a member of the Phantom Thieves and thanks them. Obviously, that's an incredibly reductive way of explaining the confidant system, but when the formula is so easy to see, it becomes a problem. More confidants in this game are forgettable than social links in Persona 4 as a whole, like Chihaya Mifune and Munehisa Iwai, but the incentive to see these characters is vastly increased due to their respective benefits. The Royal Edition of Persona 5 weaves confidants into the narrative somewhat, as to enter the last portion of the game, the player must reach a certain confidant level with Tokuto Maruki. One could argue whether or not it being optional was a good idea, but it was intentional. With this, the confidant of Kasumi Yoshizawa is also pushed to the forefront, with your party members all having heart-to-heart discussions with the player as well. The Royal Edition also completely changes the character and confidant of Goro Akechi, which transformed him from an extremely hateable sociopathic murderer to a somewhat endearing sociopathic murderer. While not perfect, the confidant system adds a lot of enjoyment to the game. The character stories are fantastic at best and mediocre at worst, with the added benefit of having each one improve the ability of the player to varying degrees. Persona 5 carries the idea of incorporating side stories to flesh out main characters as well as side characters in ways direct events in the story could not accomplish. If the quality of writing could match Persona 4 while incorporating the confidant benefit system of Persona 5, the next game in the series is sure to be a modern masterpiece. The first three Persona games, being Persona 1, 2 Innocent Sin, and 2 Eternal Punishment, contrary to popular beliefs, are games that exist. They are quite good as well, with members of the cast that consistently get brought up in the overarching discussion of best Persona characters. Some standout characters are Tatsuya Soo, Katsuya Soo, Akichi Mishima, and Maki Sonomura. I won't go too deep into the games, as that isn't the main focus of our discussion, but they are relevant due to the obvious fact that these games have no social links. Many of the main characters in these first three Persona games are fan favorites and hold a special place in my heart for the unique characterization and deep personal stories they each tell with each other. With the knowledge of how amazing each of these characters are, aside from some on the bland side, it would seem immediately that social links are unnecessary for proper development of the characters. Notice how before, I praised the deep personal story they each tell with each other. This was to convey how connected each party member has to be. The characters of the first three Personas inherently are unable to have stories unique to them due to the medium of the game, and must in turn rely heavily on a cohesive story involving all of them. In Persona 2 Innocent Sin, the entire main cast shares a backstory and grew up together. Eternal Punishment's characters are either tied with each other or the cast of the previous game in some way. And in Persona 1, they all obviously go to the same school and are quite young. Development of any one character, in turn, develops the others as well. That isn't to say that each one doesn't have their own unique personality, far from it. But they're so deeply connected that comparing the understanding you get from Yukino Mayuzumi from Personas 1 and 2 to a character even like Sojiro Sakura would be completely different. Yukino plays a part tied with Maya. Small details of her past and personality are sprinkled into the main story at key points. Your understanding of the character is deeply tied to the way she speaks to her friends over the many years you spend with her over the span of multiple games. Even with the length of time you spend with a character like Yukino, a character like Sojiro is conveyed on a deep level in a much shorter amount of time, but uniquely different. With your choice to opt into the story, the important character details are expressed to the player and understood on a much more personal and interactive level. I wouldn't say that either one is superior to the other, as I greatly enjoy members of the cast from every entry in the Persona series, but the way in which character-specific stories are told cannot be equated. Also notice how in the previously mentioned characters in Persona 1 and 2 duology, they were all main characters. This may seem obvious, but that was the main focus of those games. The first three Persona games had very little to no development of its side characters. With the increased freedom the calendar system provides in Personas 1 through 3, the downtime allows for not just the side characters, but also the already lovable main characters to be explored even more, and on a much more personal level. The choice to have a much higher emphasis on the side characters while also choosing to maintain the incredible character writing of the main cast led to the average playtime length of the later Persona games to nearly triple in length. In fact, the length has almost become synonymous with the series at this point. Spending hundreds of hours in these worlds is necessary for the type of story being told, and evidently is an incredibly effective way of storytelling. The side characters of Persona 3, 4, and 5 are so deeply tied to the atmosphere and feelings the games wish to evoke in the player that removing them entirely for a more main character-driven story would be completely out of the question. The man-made Tatsumi Port Island, sleepy town of Inaba, and bustling city of Tokyo would feel so much more empty if the only relevant characters were a small group of teenagers killing a god. The first three personas are extremely different in their approaches to narrative writing, and the direction they took with the last three games are a natural progression for the incredibly character-driven nature of the series. The new mechanics of social links and confidants allow for the writers to tell deeply personal and touching stories without fear of plot derailment or severe tonal shifts. Keeping every bit of characterization tied to the plot would bar so many fantastic stories from being told, as their inclusion would have no place along the highly specific set of tasks most JRPGs are. The one-on-one time you get with each character allows for much-needed rest from the series of antagonists and constant action, while also fleshing out characters that would otherwise seem one-dimensional. In addition to the solo interaction aspect of social links, the opt-in nature over the course of several days allows for more in-depth understanding of the character and believability to the eventual opening up they will do to the player. The conversations and stories told simply by allowing the player to interact with a character outside of plot-required events shines a light on them and allows for subversive and outstandingly deep stories. I know plenty of other games allow you to interact with characters outside of the story, but no game is quite like Persona. The characters understand the player is taking time out of their day to spend time with them, and oftentimes they thank you for it. You see them go through struggles and overcome adversity. Junpei, Dojima, Ryuji, all characters that really needed a caring person in their life, rely on you. The system adds to their characters in such a hands-on way that simply forcing the player into an interaction with them could not possibly provide. Aside from the obvious dating sim aspects of the games, the relatable friendships the party has, along with coming to know and love the environment you find comfort in every day, is an aspect no other game captures quite like the last three Persona games. After finally giving serious thought to the question, are social links necessary for Persona, it seems silly to ask now. I couldn't imagine a world without Akinari and Yukari's social links in Persona 3, Nanako and Dojima's social links in Persona 4, and Sojiro and Futaba's confidants in Persona 5. Everything in these games is so related to the characters and their social links, the atmosphere of the town, the main plot of the story, and even the music accompanying many of the scenes. Each of these are so closely tied with certain social links, and the stories they tell will stick with me for a very long time. Social links add to the series so much, regressing back to a more formulaic JRPG would take away the very essence of Persona at this point. The system and everything that comes with it is what makes this series truly unique. I adore the Persona series, and will hold the experiences they gave me close for many years to come. Each one is great in their own right, and the unique and personal stories of the social links are what really stick with me. If the continual innovation and increase in quality of social links continue, I can't wait to see how the series turns out. The characters that will mean so much to so many people is something I can't wait to see. Special thanks to Anton, Frankie Stone, Heavenly Potato, James Taylor III, Joel Eblin, John, Konyuna, Mr. 8 Eyes, POTW Gold, The Toaster Messiah, VideoGamer75 and many more for supporting the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to support, check the link in the description below. Thanks for watching this discussion video, and I'll see you in the next Tony for You. Have a good one.